Next item on the agenda is a communication from Councillor Jones on an effort to show support for police personnel with a blue line. Councillor Jones, would you like to address your letter, please?
Thank you very much, and I will keep this short and simple. This is kind of a movement that's been happening all over the country. The thin blue line is just a show of support for police personnel and a way of a community to show that they appreciate the job they do. I know I put pictures on your desk of how it's done. If I have more here, if staff or anybody else wants to see it.
Wouldn't mind seeing one.
It's a kind of a movement started a long time ago. Started as a third grade class project in Knoxville, Tennessee. And the kids went out and just started painting blue lines all over the place. And the city came back to them and said, you need a more structured thing. The first place where it was approved as an action of a city council was Findlay, Ohio. Since then, a number of cities in Ohio have been doing it. And then Wayne, New Jersey was the first community in New Jersey to do it. And I know Wayne well. That's where I went to college in Wayne, New Jersey. Since then, 72 communities in New Jersey have done it. Most of them do it down their main street. We can't do it down Main Street in Keene because we have that median going up and down Main Street. So it's not the right place for it. And that's why I suggested Marlboro Street, because that's where the police station is. Before each shift, everyone that works for the police department drives down that street after each shift. And you know, I'm sure it's important to the police department, but even more, I think the families of the police department appreciate it. The spouses, the kids, the parents of those who have family that work for the police. They would like to see that there is support for this. It's not a major expense. It's something that can come out of operating budget. We already have white paint that we use to mark parking spaces and crosswalks. All it needs is some blue tint added to it. I kept this very simple, just to do for the police department on Marlboro Street. There's been other suggestions. Someone said, what about the state police? But Ashbrook Road has a median down the middle of it, so we can't do it out there for Ashbrook. People have asked about the fire department. One Vernon Street is too narrow to have a line down the middle. We could probably do something on Hastings Avenue for the West Keene Fire Department, but there's always a question of what color to use, because the color red has alternative meanings and very political meanings out there. So I don't know what color you would use for fire department right now. So I'm keeping it simple with just a request for Marlboro Street, and we could look at other places later on. Just see how this goes first.
Thank you. I did speak to the city manager today, and I believe the cost in this is $100 or less. So even though it's a minor expense like that, I would like to see us maybe come up with some contributions and not take it out of the general fund just to show support. There's 15 of us. I'll kick in my $6 and something, but I'd like to see that just so I don't, even though it's $100, I know there's going to be somebody out there that's going to complain about it. So,
you know what, Randy? I think that's a good idea. I think that would show even more appreciation.
Right. Let the community contribute.
So I like that idea.
Instead of taking it out of the general fund.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions for the councilor? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. A little research as well. I also found out New Jersey probably has the most painted lines. And there was a town, it's Waterford Township, New Jersey. They also have a red line for the fire department. And I'd recommend us looking into that, and part of Hastings Ave. Again,
and I did look into that, yeah. Some cities have a red line, but it has a different meaning. It means where a racial conflict took place, where blood was spilled. And I just want to make sure we would, separate ourselves from that if we did do that. So
right.
It's something we can look at.
Yeah, I had thought of the same thing, but I think at this point where this is something totally brand new, I think we should stick with just Councilor Jones' request at this point, and maybe down the road, look at something more extensive if the community, agrees to that. But
yeah. Plus, it would cost me
I'd
another
like to focus
$6.
on just Marlboro Street. recommendation, and like I said, without using city funds. Just one person's opinion. Any further questions for Councilor Jones? Okay, city staff. Does anybody from city staff have a comment on this? Chief?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Brian Costa. I'm the police chief of the Keene Police Department. And since I first became aware of Councilor Jones's letter, I've been searching, trying to locate the correct words to convey not only my, but our entire department's appreciation for your thought and for your bringing this point forward. So I just want to say thank you, because I wasn't able to find that magic recipe of words. But what I did want to do is, as I drove back from Washington, D.C., it was a Thursday before the events in Dallas, which of course was followed up with the events the week after. And I think the reason I wanted to share it is because it speaks directly to the morale of your police department, of the men and women in it, and of the relationship that we have and that we value with our community. It was written by me. It was sent to the entire department first thing when I got to work that Friday morning. And this is what it said. This was the first message I received this morning when I awoke. Quote, "Welcome home. Hope you had a good trip. Please know we are keeping all of our officers in our thoughts and prayers during this difficult week. We are very thankful for the Keene Police Department and also for our community." End quote. This message was from a longtime citizen of Keene without any direct ties to law enforcement. The above sentiment is shared by many, many more in this community than not. And it didn't just happen that way by itself, but rather because of the way that each of us carries out our respective duties on a daily basis, even when it's not enjoyable to do so. This is yet another tough week for law enforcement, which we will get through by continuing to support each other in our community. More than ever, we will cling to our department's mission statement, which is to protect life and property, maintain order within the city, while assuring the fair and respectful treatment of everyone. Know that these difficult jobs that you have chosen are ones that add value to the lives of many. Your efforts and your performance of your duties and responsibilities are appreciated much more than is often articulated. Be safe. God bless. Sincerely. And I signed it. So I think that speaks to what the morale is. We value the relationship with the community. Councilor Jones's project that he wants to put forward is very much appreciated. I can't say that enough. But the point I wanted to bring up to the City Council is we recognize the support that we have with this community. We know that we have to work every day to keep it. But what happens when one of the many other worthwhile organizations, whether it be breast cancer awareness or some other organization, were to come to the council and ask for a similar display? You know, where does that go? And then if, you know, whichever way the council chooses, if it's, no, we're just sticking with the blue line, then, you know, it kind of puts the police department up here. So it's a concern I have, down the road type of concern. The appreciation on behalf of the entire department is there. But I don't know what the city will look like, and I'll probably let the city engineer talk about that, because obviously we're going to refer back to the manual that's about that thick. It's called the MUCD, the Manual Uniform Traffic Enforcement Manual. So I hope I was successful in conveying, whichever way, whichever decision is made, our true appreciation to you, sir, and to this community once again. And I'll stop talking unless there's any questions and turn it over to Don.
Questions for the chief? Okay. Thank you, Chief. I guess who from city staff is next?
Good evening, Corporal Lungus, Public Works Director. I mean, again, I certainly, understand and appreciate the chief. As far from our perspective, certainly it can be done. We'll go out and do it. I certainly also expressed the concern, I think the chief did, about the difficulty it is of saying only going so far. There are many worthwhile organizations out there who support. We're looking at the American Red Cross right now going on down in the Carolinas with the flooding that is occurring there. National Guard, of course, are supporting those kind of things. So that's the only, I guess, advice I can give to you this evening is, again, we can accomplish the work. A concern just from my perspective is just how do you, at the end of the day, we'll say we're only going to do this and this. So that's always the difficult question.
Thank you. Terry Clark, Ward 3 Councilor. I was going to ask, and I think that the Chief averted to it a little bit, there must be some sort of a code book or something. I know that Public Works has millions of them. Lines, signs, directions on streets. They're there to, for public safety mostly, slow down, don't pass, crosswalk, etc. like that. Are there any limitations to putting marks on the street that don't have really anything to do with public safety, but are for a cause or something like that? And is that allowable? If it is allowable, is it should we do it? I mean, could it in any way confuse people? I don't know. And then, where do you stop? I think everybody here knows that we do appreciate our police department. I think we're very lucky. A lot of the things that are going on in the country aren't going on here because we have a very professional police department, and I appreciate them. And we treat them very well, and they treat us very well. But I would like to have that addressed to see, being that the real reason that we have marks on the street are for public safety and such like that. I really don't want to start doing something for well-intended reasons that somewhere down the road are going to cause problems. So if somebody could address that, I'd appreciate it.
Someone?
Hi again, Corp Blomquist, Public Works Director. The Chief did talk briefly about the manual of uniform traffic control devices, and this committee certainly has heard us speak on it. That is the guidelines the state has adopted, City of Keene has adopted for signage and certainly lineage on the road. Certainly, lines and colors of lines mean certain things. They mean the same thing here in the City of Keene as they do in New York or San Francisco, et cetera. That's really the purpose, so that they're all consistent. Specifically, there isn't anything specifically that would prohibit this from occurring because, of course, they don't speak to what goes in between, for example, the center line here, the yellow lines. I think what other communities have done and what I've briefly seen is they sort of have limited it to a small area like a main street, et cetera. There isn't any prohibitions necessarily from legislatively for putting things in the road. For example, Boston puts the shamrock on the streets when they head towards the race for the Boston Marathon. Other communities down in Boston through their Irish heritage will do that. Other communities have placed different symbols on their streets. Usually, again, it's usually well publicized, and it's usually for a very kind of specific, limited area. So that certainly, I think, what Councilor is indicating when he indicated is that would certainly be the concern. Is you talked about doing blue here on Marlboro Street, red somewhere else, pink somewhere else. That certainly could become confusing, just because it's not the norm, doesn't fit what, again, people are taught when they go through driving on and so forth. So certainly it's not necessarily prohibited, but again, I would recommend that anything would be sort of a limited area, limited scope, so that it would be recognized it's something special and it's something localized.
Questions?
It's
Councilor?
more of a comment, just thinking about Court's comments. If we did something like, recently there was, fire prevention. There's, months that are set aside for recognizing certain causes, Black History Month, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe we could do something where there was a special week or month that deals with, police safety or police recognition, and we could take advantage of that and have this line as a possible another way of showing our respect, but it would be there for that period of time and then it would be down, so it would not be permanent. So just an idea that I'm throwing out there, that it be part of the celebration of the importance of the police department here in Keene. So,
Good.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Councilor Jones, for bringing this forward, because it does start the conversation. There's a lot going on across this world that many of the emergency services personnel are being targeted, which is a change of lifestyle for everyone. And it's not only just police and fire any longer, it's any municipal employee who, parking or anyone else, who seems to be taking some of the wrath of the community. I'll tell you that many of the people that I've dealt with really do support our emergency services. They do a good job, and that we're a little bit probably unique here with what we have for challenges. But our police department, fire department, everybody does a great job. I love the idea of this. I am a little concerned about what's going to happen across the city. More importantly, people like Wallier Chevrolet, Joe and Judith Wallier, if you see that they put a sign up that actually states thanking the state police and the local police for what they do for us. And I think that those types of things would give us, if we had signage across the city, would give us more of a coverage than what we're going to have with just a blue line. But I think there are other alternatives to be able to do the same thing and maybe get that conversation started to allow people to understand that we do have a good emergency services group here and really good city staff. So that's my comments. Again, thank you, Councilor Jones, for starting this conversation, because it is something that, if it's out there and we're talking about it, hopefully nothing is going to happen that's happening across the United States.
Good.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up with Councilor Hooper, in May of every year, there's Memorial Police Week. The month of May might be something to look at. They have services in Washington, D.C., and also here in New Hampshire. We have a memorial in Concord, and I think it's May 13th is the national date, and May 20th, something like that, is in New Hampshire. So just to follow up on that, May is usually that time of to recognize police that have and families that have fallen. Thank you.
Councilor Jones?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bloomquist was correct about there could be other organizations asking for colors, but I think if we put into if we set a precedence by putting it into the background notes that that it's a city department we're doing this for, so that would kind of help make it more significant that we're doing it for one of our own departments. And because he's right, we could start getting requests from everybody, so we can make that separation if we want, that we're doing it for our own department. And I don't know of it anywhere done yet in New Hampshire. I think Keene would be the first, once again, as they are on many things. I think if Keene does it, you're going to see it start showing up in many other communities within New Hampshire. And even small towns are small town police departments still face danger every time they go out. I mean, look at how small is Colebrook, New Hampshire, right? And look at the incident that happened up there. You just never know what it's like to be out on that job. And I just think we should show our appreciation for the job they do.
Anybody else from the audience have any comments they'd like to make?
Conan Soliday, 132 Kennedy Drive. For the record, I've served 4 years active duty in the Army. Hopefully that'll give a little weight to my opinion. I get the thank you for your service all the time. I get that treatment all the time, and I don't support it. I don't support this effort. I believe it sets a dangerous precedent by sending the wrong message to our law enforcement officers and to the community as a whole. And that message is that all cops, regardless of their actions, are heroes. A hero in my book is someone who performs a selfless act of courage and bravery, and I do believe that there are heroes in Keene Police Department. But these individuals need to be called out and recognized personally. The entire profession shouldn't be broad-stroked as heroes because of the uniform they put on in the morning. And by the way, officers who perform badly should also be recognized individually, and the entire department shouldn't be demonized. When I joined the Army, I knew what I was getting into. I believe that these officers also know what they're getting into. It's a dangerous job. It can be. It's not as dangerous as some professions, logging, for example, fishermen, for example. But they know what they're getting into, and they're trained and they're paid accordingly, and that should be the thanks that they get. And individuals who do go above and beyond should be individually called out and recognized, but not the entire force. Law enforcement officers and all authority figures should be held to a higher standard, to the highest standard of the land, because of the immense authority they wield, and they should be constantly reminded of that standard every single day. This thin blue line that, quote, would serve as a reminder that they always have the support of the local community is the wrong message to be sending to the entire department. The way I see it, it's like giving everyone on the team a participation trophy, and it's not helping our millennials. It's probably sent a lot of them down the wrong path. There are some other concerns that have been brought up this evening, that this also sets a precedent that, where does it end? The teachers might decide they want to paint lines out in front of their schools. I don't know what color they would pick, pink or green or something. You've got the fire department, you've got the Red Cross, all kinds of departments who do good. There are heroes in every profession. You know, where does it stop? Before you know it, the entire city is going to be painted like rainbows. And I think that, again, I think that the individual police officers, law enforcement should be recognized for their efforts, but not the entire department.
Thank you. Any further comments from the audience? Okay. A couple of comments from myself. I agree with Councillor Jones. I believe is correct, and I appreciate everybody's comments. I think when we say, well, if we do one thing, everybody else is going to want something, I think we have a tendency to try to overthink things, that we just want to make sure that we treat everybody exactly the same. But if we did that, because we have a fireman's parade, we'd have to eliminate that because we're afraid everybody else is going to ask for a parade. So where I understand, what somebody else is going to think, well, sometimes it is what it is, You're never going to please everybody in a city anywhere. Obviously, this particular request has already been done. We're not, this isn't rocket science. We're not creating something brand new. It has been done. It would be the first in New Hampshire, clearly. And as somebody that tries to ride in with the police 4 to 5 times a year, for those that think Keene's a sleepy little town from midnight to 6, you have another thing coming. We are very fortunate, as Councillor Clark said, that we have a very professional police department. Other communities have problems. I get it. We're very fortunate. I, for one, don't think painting a small blue line down Marlboro Street showing support is going to have any negative effect. There might be some people that don't like it. There's some people that don't like fireman's parade. They don't like waiting in traffic. One thing we've all learned from this job, you're not going to please everybody. Sometimes it's hard to please anybody, but it's the way it goes. With that said, clearly there's other things to look at. The Public Works Director, mentioned a couple of comments, and actually the Chief of Police mentioned a couple of things. I don't think there's something we can do tonight. I think it has merit. And I would like to at least see this, and I hate putting everything on more time, but I think there's a couple of questions that need to be answered by staff. And obviously cost isn't going to be one of those, because we can handle that very easily. So if there's no objections, I would like, hopefully, somebody make a motion just to put on more time for one cycle so we can have our questions answered. Staff can kind of follow up on some of the comments that were made here tonight. And obviously, Councilor Manwaring will be back in a couple of weeks, and we can have the full committee here to discuss it. So that'd be my opinion. If any one of the, of course, I'll look out to see if there's any further questions from the audience at this point. Anybody like to make a motion, or anybody further comments on the committee? Okay. Once again,
Just Thank
Sure.
you, Corporal Jones, Public Works Director. Just to, sure, when you say you want staff to answer questions, you're comfortable with the cost. What other, I guess, other things would you like us to look at over the next 2 weeks?
Basically, what I'd like to get would be actual cost.
Okay.
What it would take
that.
to do that. And I know some other communities were brought up, just maybe a little bit of research for other communities that have done it and seen what the results have been.
So how they done it.
If it's come out positive, negative, what some of the, what they found,
Okay.
how it's gone, how the communities felt about it.
All right, that helps. Thank
Okay.
you.
City Attorney?
I have my own question about that. So for the Public Works Director, I'm not overly familiar with how you decide what lines you paint and where you paint them. But is this something that the department do you believe that the department, if the council were to request it, has the independent authority to do? Or is this something that would require some further council action through the city code?
I don't believe there's an action of city code that needs to occur. I think we have the authority to, again, paint or provide markings within, again, our engineering between us and the police department interpretation of the man-used traffic good device. Really, for the council perspective, it's really the policy in this case, I think it's been identified here where we're talking about a blue line for the police department. Someone talked about a red line potentially for the fire department. It's really that policy of where, because this is back to, I think, my earlier discussions where other communities have placed symbols on the road that are not necessarily in the MUTCD, but they're in limited areas, they're for special kind of events, and that's what I would want to make sure that we're clearly doing, is to understand that this would be, again, in a limited area, what the purpose of it is for, so we don't get into, again, doing blue lines all over the place, which can become confusing to the public about what does this mean.
So you're suggesting, if I hear it right, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, to the Public Works Director, that one of the things that we might do is look at some of these other communities and see how they have formalized this, right? Either through
Correct.
some kind of policy, resolution,
However they did it, right.
declaration.
However they did it, and to understand, again, where they did it. My sense, just briefly, and what we've just seen briefly today, it appears that, again, they're in their limited scope in immediate areas of things like the downtown, which is, et cetera, not necessarily, again, all over, because, again, it would become confusing, and we would, again, from my perspective, I would not be recommending we do this in, again, large areas. It's the same thing about trying to control who, where, and what, as one of the speaker mentioned. Oh, we have, the schools. Well, we got 6 schools in this, and you start putting things out in front of them, it can become problematic.
Okay, thank you.
And hopefully those questions will be answered in the next couple of weeks. Further comments or questions? Councilor O'Connor for motion, please.
Yes. Recommend MSFI put Councilor Jones' request for a blue line on Marlboro Street for a cycle, for a period of 1 cycle, on one time for 1 cycle.
Second?
Moving to second. Further comments? All those in favor? 4-0. Being nothing else on the agenda tonight, we are adjourned. Thank everybody very much.